As the humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza deepens, yet another tragedy has struck aid distribution point in Khan Yunis. According to the controversial US and Israeli-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, 20 people were killed by stampedes. Though eyewitnesses and medics placed the blame on Israeli fire, the incident adds to the alarming toll of over 875 Gazans killed while attempting to access food since May, most of them near GHF 8 points. International condemnation mounts as UN Special Rapporteur Francesca Albanese has called for states to sever economic ties with Israel, criticizing the GHF's role in perpetuating violations. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump has taken a sharp turn in his approach to Russia-Ukraine war. After months of attempts to bridge gaps between the two sides, Trump has now green-lighted advanced weapons shipments to Ukraine and issued an ultimatum to Russia: strike a ceasefire deal within 50 days or face very severe secondary tariffs. I'm Rana Al-Qassas. Welcome to In Focus. According to a report by Al-Ahram Online, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation said the 20 people were killed today at an aid distribution point in Khan Yunis, southern Gaza. The US and Israel-backed organization claimed the deaths were the result of a stampede driven by agitators, with 19 trampled and 1 stabbed. However, a medical source at Nasser Hospital contradicted this, saying 9 people, several of them children, were killed after Israeli forces opened fire on a crowd seeking food near Rafah. The same source stated that the aid center's gates had been closed when the occupation forces and private security opened fire. Al-Ahram Online added, this tragedy took place alongside Israeli airstrikes that killed 8 more people across Gaza. The incident adds to the toll of over 875 Palestinians reportedly killed while trying to access food since late May, most of them near GHF sites, according to the UN. While the GHF denies responsibility, UN officials noted that most injuries were from gunshots. The GH also alleged firearms were found among the crowd and reported threats to its personnel, according to Al-Ahram Online. And for more analysis, we're joined from Occupy Jerusalem by Ratiba Nacha, Palestinian National Action Committee member. A very warm welcome to our program In Focus, and it's a pleasure to have you today with us in this interview. Ms. Nacha, more than 875 Palestinians have been killed while seeking food since late May, most near Gaza Humanitarian Foundation sites. What does this tell us about the real function of this US and Israeli-backed organization? The real function.
Yes. Yeah. Militarizing humanitarian aids is the main goal of this association that seems to be humanitarian, but in reality, it's a military association that aim to collect information, security information, and kill people who are seeking food and aids from anywhere, even if they know that it's a trap of death. When they are trying to go for this long journey, that it's surrounded with this much of danger, to find a way of finding something to eat for them and for their loved one at home. They cut hundreds of kilometers sorry, tens of kilometers, sometimes or more than 10 kilometers to reach to these association. They were they has been shot and killed in daily basis. But otherwise, this is the only way of getting food. So what I can say
This
about
is not
this
a way of
trap
getting
of
food,
death.
Ms. Natsha. They will never get food this way. They will only get killed.
Yes, it's just like a very dangerous journey for searching for food. I know at the end they shoot them, and it's like if you are lucky and survive with some winds or maybe a bullet in your feet, you will be lucky for that, and you will maybe have some food for your beloved one, not for you, especially.
The
Exactly,
children,
this is
yeah,
what happened.
the
It's like
children
they
of
are,
course.
yeah, they are seeking their lives to find a way of getting some food. This is what we call it, a trap of death. This is what we say materializing human aid, and this is what we call it, that it's against the humanitarian logic or attitudes at all. So we can describe these organizations as a humanitarian aid organization in any way of its behavior. And we have like 130
So, are you with or
international
against this
organization.
organization, Dr. Atiba?
Again, I didn't hear the
Are
question.
you with or against this organization?
Of course, we are against these
You're
organization. This
against it.
organization, it's a trap of death. So what, how we can support that much of killness and death that causes by these organization? And it's not just the Palestinian who are against these organization. Even the humanitarian organization, the international organization, are all against these organization and its way of working, and the much of death that it caused for the Palestinian. If we are talking now about more than 700 murdery in these traps of death, but in reality, we have thousands of people who has been shot in this journey of death for seeking some food or aids from this organization. Of course, we are against this organization. It's a security and militarizing organization. It has nothing to do with humanitarian aid. It's a direct cause of death for the Palestinian um, that are searching a way of living, and instead of that they got just death and shots from this organization. And in the other side, even who succeed to get some food from this aids, it's instead of, yeah, it's not for free, it's for information and collecting information from those people. So you can't say that this security organization and militarizing organization can be an aid and a humanitarian aid
Okay, it's
organization
not an aid.
anyway.
Mrs. Ratiba, the GHF blamed what they called agitators in the crowd for today's deaths, but medics and eyewitnesses confirmed that Israeli occupation forces opened fire. How should the international community treat this conflicting narrative?
Actually, I think that the GHF is a partner with the Israeli defense, if it's defense army or the Israeli army, and they work together with cooperation with each other. And this causes of death, it's really prepared and planned from day one of this organization.
Do you
So we
think,
can't even
or do you
take the
think, or is it confirmed?
we can't, yes, it's confirmed. And if you look in the structure of
So,
this organization,
Dr.
the people who
Ratiba,
work
the
in this organization,
GHF belongs to
the
to Israeli
yes, the
intelligence.
background of the people who work in this organization come from security background, all of them, and military background. So what the need of military and security background for people who are working for an aid, a humanitarian aid organization? This is one point. The second point, this organization was planned by the Israeli side and the Israeli army, not from the United Nations, for example. And that means that the real funder of this organization is the Israeli side, and its aims to find more information and to seek for more information for the military action
Okay,
in
got your point.
Gaza for the
The
Israeli side.
UN.
So they are very, very cooperation, يعني a lot of cooperation between the two sides, and they are a real partner with each other.
Okay, they're partners with each other, and you're confirming so, Retiba Nacha. The UN Special Rapporteur on Palestine, Francesca Albanese, called on 32 nations to sever economic ties with Israel. How effective can such diplomatic and economic actions be, and why has this call sparked US sanctions on Albanese?
Actually, we have some improvement in the international, let's say, behavior in these days after
You
20,
mean
more
the
than 20
international community's
months.
reaction towards what's happening in
It's not
Gaza?
the international community at all, let's say, but we say that today we have like a 30 countries that have a meeting or a committee today, a supplement to maybe to plan for some actions against Israel and to put some punishment on Israel, and maybe to stop exchanging weapons with Israel and other kind of trades. I think this kind of punishment or this kind of movement may afraid Israel and may let it take a step backward in turning its back to the international law. But we still need a lot of efforts from more and more countries to be brave and take these actions against Israel and to stop, for example, the trade operation and the military cooperation with Israel, and boycott the institutes, the Israeli institutes that support this war in different ways. By this way, yes, we can take an action to stop Israel from turning its back to the international law, and maybe we can push it a step backward from this genocide that it's done in front of everyone, and everyone is silent, and we can break the silence. And if we break the silence, it's like a snowball that can be bigger
Do you
and
think
bigger
it's not too
and
late,
make a change.
Ms. Ratiba?
Again,
Do you think it's not too late?
uh, it's too late. It's 77 years of occupation. It's 77 years since the first genocide that Israel make against the Palestinian. We are in a continuous Nakba since then till now. And what we are witnessing now, it's a cause of this late action from everyone toward the Palestinian case and toward the Palestinian rights. So yes, it's too late. It's not just about 646 days of war in Gaza, but it's about a continuous aggressions and escalating.
Got your point. Given the increasing pressure from the Hague Group and international legal networks directly charging Israel with genocide, are we approaching a turning point in global accountability for Israel's war crimes, or will Western powers again block real justice?
I think real justice will be achieved when we change the system of voting in the Security Council, because till now, the United States and the biggest state, the five states, main states in the council, protect Israel and work against the will of everyone in this world. So I think this is the starting point, and without this starting point of stopping this I don't know, privilege that it's given to some one to make a veto on the will of everyone in this world is a real injustice. And this injustice will not just affect the Palestinian, but it affects the weak countries on the world more and more, and make the people suffer from this injustice in this world. So, yeah, I know that the liberation of Palestine is the liberation of the world. And this is the sentence that we always use it, because we can't achieve a real justice in Palestine without changing this system and have a real liberation in the international committee to take an action or a decision with a free will of the countries and the people and the majority of the people in the world.
That was Ratiba Nacha, Palestinian National Action Committee member. Thank you very much for your insights, valuable knowledge and informative knowledge and intellectual knowledge, of course. And now we move on to the Russia-Ukraine conflict. According to the Washington Post, Trump's recent pivot towards Ukraine, announcing advanced weapons deliveries and a 50-day ultimatum for Russia to end the war, has sparked concern among some Russian elites who fear a missed diplomatic opportunity. For months, Trump had shown signs of accommodating Russia's position, with envoys exploring deals to ease sanctions in exchange for freezing the front lines. However, this shifted dramatically as Trump voiced frustration with Moscow's continued fighting and hinted at tougher sanctions. While Kremlin officials publicly downplayed the ultimatum, there's growing unease over Russia's economic strain due to wartime spending, high interest rates and sanctions, the Washington Post added. Despite these pressures, Russian officials remain confident. Meanwhile, polling by Russia's Levada Center shows a record high 64% of Russians now favor peace talks. Analysts, cited by the Post, say concern is rising that Putin may have overplayed his hand by rejecting earlier overtures. Still, many in Moscow see Trump's threats as political theater, doubting he'll follow through on extreme measures like 100% tariffs on China or India. Russian state media has reacted fiercely, accusing Trump of Bidenization, according to the Washington Post. And for more analysis, we're joined now from New York by Irina Tuskerman, the political researcher. A very warm welcome to In Focus, and it's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
Trump's new deadline gives Russia's 50 days to reach a ceasefire or face 100% secondary tariffs, which is, of course, 100%. How do you read this escalation?
Well, here's the thing. On the surface, it seems like one of the most dramatic and confusing reversals in U.S. foreign policy positioning in recent memories. After all, for years, Trump has been skeptical towards U.S. involvement in the war and repeated suggestions that he could end the war in 24 hours through negotiations. Now he's appearing to pivot towards a more militarized approach, authorizing a significant new arms package for Ukraine, reportedly telling President Zelensky to strike military targets inside Russia as long as he avoids Moscow. But all of that is in itself appears to be contradictory. Why, Moscow has legitimate military targets, including the political elites, which are ultimately responsible for the decision making inside the regarding this war. Moreover, he appears to have quietly to walk back their earlier threats of enforcing secondary sanctions and tariffs on countries doing business with Russia.
President Trump's validity to put 100% sanction on Russia?
So there are two different things. One is to tariff Russia itself. The second issue is the issue of secondary sanctions on countries that are doing business with Russia. He is still threatening the tariff issue, but it would not take effect until after 50 days from his announcement. The secondary sanctions issue seems to have disappeared off the headlines after his initial comments. And the fact that he is walking back some of the financial repercussions for Russia so quickly raises serious questions about his endgame, his strategic calculus, and the signals he's sending to both Kiev and Moscow. So the biggest decision is to authorize new weapons deliveries to Ukraine. It's a major strategic pivot, but on the other hand, most of these weapons are defensive. Most of them have already been authorized, and many of them were en route to Ukraine to begin with, but they were paused by one of Trump's appointees, Eldridge Colby, who essentially claimed that providing Ukraine with patriots would deplete U.S. strategic reserves in that regard. And
Got your point. Got your point. Trump's decision to supply Ukraine with Patriot and Tomahawk systems marks a radical departure from his earlier reluctance. What changed in this calculus?
the optics changed. Some credit Melania with this decision because Trump, after yet another positive discussion with Putin, came back to hear Melania underscore that right after that conversation, Putin authorized an attack on another civilian hub, another city in Ukraine, and this has been a repeated pattern. Putin seemed to take these calls with Trump as a green light to continue aggression, particularly once defensive aid to Ukraine was paused. And in recent weeks, these attacks have escalated, accumulating civilian casualties, and it's created very negative publicity for Trump. For Trump himself, he also became aware of the fact that he is not making diplomatic gains in this war. It's no closer to its resolution than when he first took office, despite his promises to end it very quickly. None of that bodes well for Trump's posture as a peacemaker. Another pressure point is external to the conflict, which is his inability to through diplomatic means other foreign policy crises, including the war in Gaza, and to get Iran to come back to the negotiating table and to conclude a new nuclear
That's a
deal
lot.
with Iran.
That's a lot on his plate. Trump clarified he opposes Ukraine using U.S. missiles to strike Moscow. Yet he's expanding arms support. Is he walking a fine line between escalation or also trying to leave the door open for talks with Russia?
Yes, he is on the one hand is engaging in tactical assistance to Ukraine, which is a major psychological and strategic shift even for him. But the distinction of drawing a red line around what he perceives as symbolic escalation, even though it's been done many times before, is that he wants to increase pressure on Putin without triggering what he believes to be a full-scale Russian retaliation or nuclear panic. He's trying to choreograph the war in a way that he believes would maximize battlefield leverage while preserving plausible space for future negotiations. However, there's no evidence that anything would change because, as I said, we've been there before. Nothing seems to have stopped Putin from continuing attacks on civilians. Rather, that's a testimony to Russia's military weakness and its ability to make major groundbreaking progress on the battlefield. Ukraine's successful operations against not just Moscow but other military targets, such as Operation Spiderweb, have significantly weakened Russia's military capacity. If anything, continuing to attack Russia's launch sites and production facilities inside Russia and major political and economic targets in Moscow would send a much stronger signal and psychological signal to the political elites in Russia and perhaps cause them to reconsider where Russia stands in terms of their military capacity in this conflict.
Okay.
Also,
Russia has dismissed the ultimatum as a theatrical gesture, but internally, elites are reportedly growing anxious. Could this mark the beginning of a rupture within Russia's power structure?
I don't think so. I think it's very unlikely, and even if it is, Putin has been ruthless with anyone who opposes him. So long as an authoritarian dictator is in power, there's no chance for alternative viewpoints to put significant pressure sufficiently to put an end to the war. However, it would still be useful in terms of weakening Russia from within and making it less cohesive and less coordinated. Putin views these 50 days as an advantage that he was given, a time to maximize airstrikes on Ukraine and to try to gain ground advantage and to make maximum trade deals and everything else he needs to ensure his ability to continue the war effort.
What do you think that Putin will make out of the 50 days?
He sees it as a timeline to continue striking, a free time, and this is what he's been bargaining for. So Russia needs time. It needs time because it has experienced heavy personnel losses, heavy equipment losses, heavy financial and economic losses. Being given 50 additional days with no financial or economic repercussions is a boon for Russia. It's an advantage that they can use to accumulate as much as they can in terms of deals with other countries, whether they're North Korea, whether they're raiding rare earth minerals and metals, precious metals in Africa, or laundering money through assorted third countries. All of that is a time that Putin is gaining from his perspective.
Got your point. Polling shows 64% of Russians now support peace talks. Do you believe this growing sentiment could pressure the Kremlin, or is public opinion too weak to penetrate the hardline war consensus?
Public opinion is irrelevant in terms of actually affecting decision making regarding the war, but it is relevant in the case that dissatisfied public creates additional and distracting problems internally, and anything that weakens Russia and forces it to consider internal issues is a distraction from its ability to do damage externally and to plan for other potential invasion operations. From that perspective, the shift in public opinion is useful. It also delegitimizes the war internationally, because many countries have been looking towards internal Russian support as a justification for their own support for Moscow. Seeing that the public opinion is squarely towards diplomacy could make that important shift in the level of assistance Russia is getting from others.
Some argue that Trump's shift is a performance for the West and that no real pressure is being applied to Russia. Do you believe Trump still sees a deal with Moscow as possible?
I think he still very much is geared towards that, and the evidence for that is his own recent quote. He was asked whose side he is on in his conflict, and he said that he's on nobody's side and that he doesn't support either country. And frankly, I think he believed that Ukraine would be easier to pressure because it's a smaller and weaker country, and because he seemed to have a personal admiration and a sense of rapport with Putin. That turned out to not be the case. So now he's shifting towards this sort of neutrality for the sake of making a deal. I do not believe he actually necessarily wants Ukraine to win. That is not his position. His position is to achieve some sort of a diplomatic breakthrough by a stalemate between two sides when they both decide.
Trump's earlier envoys had floated proposals recognizing Russia's territorial gains in return for freezing the front lines. Why did those efforts collapse, and do they still represent a potential framework for future talks?
Well, Ukraine was never going to go along with territorial concessions to Russia, and quite frankly, nobody except maybe Trump and some of his advisors, seriously believed that Russia, even upon symbolic acceptance of those terms, would ever really fully stop in its goal. It would at best postpone its continued aggression, whether in Ukraine or outside Ukraine. But Russia has been engaged in other acts of aggression outside Ukraine already. So additional concessions would not put an end to internal ambitions Once those ambitions are set in an authoritarian state, even military failures and diplomatic agreements don't necessarily mean much. And Russia has violated every single major agreement it has concluded internationally with the U.S. in the past decades. So there's no reason to believe it would ever honor something like that, even if it had agreed for the sake of a brief pause or getting something out of the international community.
That was Irina Tushkurman, the political researcher. Thank you very much for your insights, valuable knowledge, and intellectual. And of course, you added so much to our episode today. Thank you very much for your insights. That wraps up today's episode of In Focus. Thank you very much for joining us. Until next time, stay tuned. I'm Rana Khosros.